Hi, this is Sandra Christensen, and this is the Voice of the People live stream. I'm really excited about today's guest, Rachel Walden. We're going to get into that in a minute, but I just wanted to remind all of our guests that the election is just around the corner, and mail-in ballots and early in-person voting starts on June 24th, which is just a week away. The last day to vote is July 21st. I'd like to welcome my guest, Rachel Walden. She's an amazing individual. She's currently serving on the Mesa Public Schools Governing Board, and she's the vice chair of the Arizona Corporation Commission. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, you and I met about, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago when we were both campaigning to run for school board.
Yes.
Different areas.
And we were actually at Scottsdale Unified, and there were something controversial going on there. And we met at that event together.
Yes, and I have really enjoyed following things that you're doing in Mesa as well as the Corporation Commission, because I think you and I really align, not just politically, but our work ethic is really strong. And it's funny, when we were both running, people used to confuse me. They used to call me Rachel all the time.
I remember that. Yeah, there were a couple people that kept mixing us up. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But you didn't have the red in your hair back then either.
Yeah,
So it was just, I think they saw dark hair and dark eyes and thought we were the same person.
Yes, that's super funny. But I would love to learn about your race. You're actually running for re-election in Mesa Public Schools.
I am.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was elected to the commission in 24, so my term for there will end in 2028, or if I want to run for re-election there, that's 2028. My term for school board ends this year. I am running to keep my seat. I'm really passionate about the work that I started on the board. And since it's unpaid service, I'm able to hold both offices. So you can only get paid one time from the state. So I really got to see a lot of good things start, and I want to see some of those things through to completion. And we're going in a good direction. Really happy with the superintendent that I was part of hiring. So I think there's good things to come. There's going to be difficult decisions that have to be made, but I believe I'm the best person to make those decisions.
I believe so too. And it's really important to have a good relationship with your superintendent. When I first started on my school board, I did not. And I've actually been through 4 superintendents in 4 years. We've had a rough start. But I believe that this current superintendent that we have, we've promoted from within, and we didn't have to use an outside source this time. And he has been very respectful, and he listens to all voices, which is very important to me because as the lone Republican voice on my school board, it's been a challenge these last 3.5 years. But I think we're in a good position to move forward, and we're really looking at some things that are very positive. And I know your district is doing the same. One of the things that I'm very excited about in our district is that we are really pushing we're pushing 2 career paths, not just college anymore, but looking at people to fill the pipeline in welding and some of the trades. And so we're doing a lot of things. You guys have EVIT on your side of town, but we have Westmec.
Yeah.
And we're partnering with them, and we're doing a lot of things even at Paradise Valley High School through our CREST program that looks at a lot of those types of jobs.
Yeah, those things are so great for students. And it doesn't mean they're not going to go to college, right? Right. Student debt is a huge problem in this country. It's a huge problem. But there's a lot of companies that will actually pay for your tuition if you work for them. And so you could do both. I mean, you could learn a trade or do something where you're going to get actually paid more than minimum wage when you get out of high school, make some money, and then also get your tuition reimbursement. I just found out that 2/3 of EVIT students actually do go to college. So, while they're learning something there and getting a certification, it doesn't mean that college isn't an option for them down the road. Our college rate at Mesa Public Schools is only about 50%. So it really makes sense for us to have a good relationship with something like EVIT. Now, we took 5 of our comprehensive high schools and implemented what we're calling our college and career academies. And so we're setting students sort of on a path that's an area of focus while they're in high school. Now, we're not pigeonholing them. Some people feel that way, but it's trying to be more interdisciplinary and make education worthwhile for them. So, for example, we have like a medical path in the high schools that students can take and decide early on, if this is something that they're interested in. You really don't want to wait till college to
Yes.
figure that out, I mean, you're going to be spending a lot of money taking courses you don't need if you keep changing your major. Figure it out while it's free.
Yeah, and I'm really happy you made that distinction, because I misspoke a little bit, because we're in our beginning stages, and I think we are looking at other school districts like Mesa Public Schools, but we're doing the same thing in PV, and they're already presenting to the governing board. But we're looking at similar things, kind of having these paths for success for our students. But they're, as you mentioned, we're not pigeonholing them in. They're learning skills, different skill set, and they're trying to figure it out, as you mentioned, when it's free. And I think it's really helped with our potential future enrollment, because we're pushing it down to the middle schools and saying, hey, this is what's coming down the pike for you all. And I think there's an excitement again about public schools.
That's what there needs to be. And I think all the districts are in the same boat across the country about the effects of the shutdowns. And one of those effects that doesn't really get talked about is the disinterest in education. And students are maybe jaded.
Yes.
Maybe they're unsure about their future, but they're not typically like actually interested in learning. And that's been a big problem everyone's trying to combat, is there was learning loss from the shutdowns that will probably carry into the 2030s, right? With achievement gaps and proficiency gaps that we're seeing, but also trying to help them be interested in the point of education. And so I think giving them more world examples, real world examples, meaningful projects in their schools will help engage them in those endeavors, right?
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that the COVID shutdowns really highlighted that. But as I am now on my 4th year on the governing board, and I'm doing some deep dives into the data, it actually was happening well before, decades before. We're just seeing the effects now, and COVID really highlighted it and increased that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we did start to see proficiency drops. The state changed the state standards, and they did expedite some of the things that you would learn. So like my stepdad, he's been teaching 6th grade for 40 years. They used to teach statistics in 7th grade. When they changed the state standards at that point, they moved it down to 5th grade, that you would start doing statistics in 5th grade, which is pretty early.
Yeah.
But what happened during that change is it created gaps. So like for his 6th grade students, anybody in 6th grade that year never got taught statistics because they were already past 5th grade and they stopped teaching it in 7th grade. And so there were a lot of holes like that got created in the state standard change. And then when we moved to the Every Student Succeeds Act and they prioritized social emotional learning.
What year was that? Do you
right?
remember?
It was like 2014, 15, it was signed into law.
Okay.
But even the New York Times, right?
Yes.
The New York Post calls the New York Times a former newspaper, because they think their reporting is so bad and they're not really journalists anymore, right? They don't seem to be known as much for the same journalistic integrity that other organizations thought they had. But even they recently ran a story saying that proficiencies really started to drop since No Child Left Behind was sort of eliminated in terms of academic proficiency, and then we replaced it with social emotional learning.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a really good point you bring up. Like, we were already starting to see proficiency go down. That was happening, for Arizona, and from what the New York Times reported, other states too, when we brought in all the social emotional learning, which is a big universe, right? There's a lot of things there, but
and that's really interesting. So I have a son that went through the public schools here in Arizona, and I didn't really realize, because he was my only son and I was working full time, but I ended up quitting my job because he started getting bullied. And it was interesting, and I am a hard worker, so I was a little bit bored. So I immediately started working in the classroom and volunteering with all the mom stuff that goes on when you have young children in schools. And I did notice differences from back a million years ago when I was in school. There was some interesting things happening. And I have a boy, and they kept saying, well, Mrs. Christensen, he should probably be put on some medication. And I'm like, why? He's not sick. And they're like, well, he really doesn't sit still. And I'm like, yeah, because he's a boy. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because I kept pushing back, and I'm like, well, how are his grades? Well, he's doing very well in class. I'm like, then he's fine. And so I started being aware, And I remember it was in fourth grade that there was a teacher that was, and I'm in the classroom just cutting out whatever he needed help with. And there was something about, he started talking about how everything was racist. And that's the first time I ever heard of that type of messaging. And he had indicated that all of the presidents up until Abraham Lincoln were racist because they owned slaves. And so then I had to have a conversation with my son. After that, it's like, well, this is history. A lot of people owned slaves during this time, but then there were people that helped free the slaves. But, so when you say these statements to these young minds in fourth and fifth grade, they really listen, and it's harmful. Did you ever experience anything like that? Did you ever volunteer in the classroom?
I never got called to volunteer in the classroom. My daughter was at 2 different schools, in Mesa Public Schools, and I kept trying to volunteer in the classroom. I think because I was running for school board, they didn't want me in the classroom.
That's funny.
I don't think they thought I was going to win either. But yeah, I mean, I think, we're seeing, and we've been seeing for a while, like, a big push to try to bring more of sort of social emotional learning or restorative justice into the classroom. And it's a really hard argument to make that you need to bring that in the classroom when none of the kids are at grade level.
Right.
It's like we need to take as much time as we can in the classroom to focus on instructional time. So when you break down, like, how many minutes a day are kids spending, reading or doing math, and it's actually very little. And that's where they actually need to remove more things out of the classroom and increase the time spent on the basics, right? So, a lot of people you probably hear it and they tell you, well, you need to teach this in school and you should be teaching this. And I'm like, well, there's only so many hours in the day, so you have to tell me what we're going to remove before we add anything. And I think there are things to remove, like the conversations that, they're having in elementary schools that are really, they're not grade level conversations, right? For those little kids.
Exactly.
But removing noise and other ideologies and initiatives to go back to focusing on the basics and teaching the state standards. And now that I have a board and a superintendent that's really focused on increasing proficiency, and he's really, got his people in there and analyzing what's happening in the classroom, I've been surprised at the number of teachers that have had to admit that they're not actually teaching to state standards.
Well, that's very interesting. So when parents like us, because we're both parents that have had kids go through schools, we expect two things. We expect them to learn to read and write and do math and, the arts and the other electives as well, but we also expect them to be safe. And so those two things, learning and safety, are very important, and all the other stuff is, to me, is noise, but I'm a little bit more black and white on education. I feel that education needs to stay in their lane, and all the other stuff, the emotional stuff, that's the job of the parent, because the parents are the ones that have the right to direct the education, upbringing, health, mental health of their own children. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, amen. Totally agree to that. Uphold the Parents' Bill of Rights, and that Bill of Rights was written for a reason, right?
Right.
A lot of parents don't even understand that schools may be doing some of the things they're doing. And I think that's what made a lot of people get more politicized during the shutdowns when classes were being streamed, and parents were like, wait, what did they just say to you? We were sort of blind about it. But yeah, schools should absolutely stay in its lane. I have that philosophy for all of government, really strong believer in separation of powers. And, the authority of each office was carved out for very specific reasons. And we go outside our lanes, we start to mess things up,
Yes, agreed. I'm going to pivot us a little bit, and I want to understand, you and I talked a little bit about this before the show, that we're not really good at tooting our own horns and our accomplishments, but I would like you to share with our viewers some of the accomplishments that you've had, not just on Mesa Public Schools, where you're running for re-election, but as vice chair of the Corporation Commission.
Yeah, no, we were talking about that, because some people are really good at it, and I'm just super awkward. I was like trying to do social media posts. Well, we got this done, and I'd rather not have to do that. But if you want to fix things, you have to get elected, and then that does require you to promote yourself. But I was part of the first board in the district's history to have academic proficiency as board goals. We only had academic proficiency as board goals, and it blew me away when I was told that we were the first board to do that. And it wasn't like some all-Republican board, it was a mixed bag. But all 5 board members were saying, we keep seeing proficiency drop year after year, and we need to turn it around. Before I was on the board, like around 2019, they had board goals that were all rooted in critical race theory that had nothing to do with academic achievement. So I definitely am not the status quo. And we were turning things around in that district. So I'm happy about that. We've created more educational opportunities. I love that we've been able to create some K through 8 schools, and we created 2 new high schools. So to meet that increased demand for academic rigor, that's what is driving some of our programs. So we just have starting this school year, 7 through 12 Shepherd College Prep. So it's a college prep school. Then we took our Franklin model, which is like a very traditional model. They're teaching like really solid math. That's like the Saxon math, Spalding phonics. It's not actually Saxon, but it's like similar to a really good kind of more traditional math curriculum. But we created a high school for that. So now you can take that traditional workload and go K through 12. That high school is shaping up to be about 600 kids.
Wow.
So it's very popular. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we're increasing options for parents. We've added new electives to meet the modern world. Like we added a business and personal finance elective, and we added a cybersecurity elective. And for people that don't know, the reason why they're electives is because the state standards don't require that we teach those things.
Correct.
So we don't add it as a core class, but as an elective course. And those changes will be based on the interest from the community. So I think if parents really want to see these kinds of changes in their schools, they need to show up,
right?
And they need to ask for these changes, because if students don't enroll in these classes, then the classes will have to go away.
Agreed.
We can't offer classes for 6 kids. The money's just not there to do something like that. So those are some of our big accomplishments. We've got a great partnership with EVIT. That's the East Valley Institute of Technology. And it's a great campus. They have like a 98% graduation rate, really high up to 95% completion rate for their certifications. There's 11 districts that feed into EVIT. 9 of them decided, instead of working with EVIT for their students,
those stories.
They're suing them.
Yes.
I am super happy that Mesa was the first one to come out with their own intergovernment agreement with them. And we are bringing in a nursing program, like a nursing satellite program to Red Mountain High School, which is the east side of Mesa, and a welding program. And the cool thing about those is that we're bringing revenue into the district. So EVIT pays us to lease that space and offer those programs. So there's a lot of things like that we're doing to actually bring revenue in to help keep our schools open and run our schools, and being smart about the empty space.
Yes.
So a lot of stuff I'm happy with. Commission, there's 5 of us, and I saw all of their campaigns. 2 of them I campaigned with because there were 3 seats in 24. But rolling back the mandates that bring up costs, removing subsidies. We removed the renewable energy standard tariff that had been implemented. That's cost like over $3 billion. So when we campaigned and we talked about, look, we need all of the above for energy. We want to keep prices out. We want to cut expenses that shouldn't be in the rates. All that stuff has been happening in all of our rate cases at the commission.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what the primary responsibilities are as a commissioner in Arizona? Because I don't think people really fully understand what the Corporation Commission actually does.
Well, there's 5 divisions. So we have our utilities division that the rate cases and stuff will go through, but also our hearings division. So it's a quasi-judicial role where we're more like judges than anything else. And the administrative law judges that oversee the hearings for rule changes and for rate cases, they're like our proxy as a commissioner. That's its own division. We have railroad safety as a division, the corporations division. So for people that are filing their LLCs and stuff, they're all going through our corporations division. And then securities, which is my background, it's the investment advisor and investment product division. And so primarily in our meetings, the things that we are voting on our rate cases. Now, rate cases is the one everybody talks about, even though there's a lot more than rate cases, but the cost of things is a problem, and it's been a problem for
And it's hitting all of our pocketbooks.
a long time.
Yes.
So trying to keep costs down is really important for the commission. But our constitutional authority, like we're only one of a handful of states that actually has a state constitution that says what we're there for, and it's there to prescribe just and reasonable rates. So, and there are rights that utilities have for providing service where they should get a recovery for responsible and prudent investments and things that they have to spend in their service territory to keep the lights on. So that is a big part of the commission. And then we get a lot of, like, every meeting, there's always fraud cases that we're voting on for restitution or for trying to get a recovery of assets lost or fining people for various laws that they've broken. And we can actually refer to the AG for criminal charges should a fraud case warrant that. And then we're seeing a lot of votes for things like certificates of environmental compatibility for, like, new gas plants being built, and we call them, CECs, but for people that don't know what a CEC is, there's a lot of those items on our agendas too. So those are probably the three primary things that we're voting on the most in our meetings are the things from our line siting committee, rate cases, and securities.
That's very fascinating. I had no idea what breadth of knowledge you had, number one, but also the big scope that you guys really look into.
Yeah, it's a big scope, and I'm the only commissioner that has a financial background too. But I argued, and I'd say I did it well because I won in 2024, but the commission really is a financial role because when you're looking at costs and rates, it's not really about energy policy at all. It's about how am I going to keep things low cost but also reliable. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done and looking at the expenditures and looking at the financial health of the utility.
I have a question for you, and I don't know if this is something you can answer. On my drive into the studio today, I was listening to the radio, and I heard that my home state of New Mexico, which is our neighbor, has a big solar farm, and we are looking, Arizona, to be able to help offset some of our energy needs with that. And that's the first I'd heard of that. Is that on your radar yet? Have you heard of partnerships with New Mexico?
Yeah, so the commission is interesting because of state statute going back to the 1970s. We do not approve the construction of solar or wind farms. So a lot of what we saw since the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed, I think 2021 under the Biden administration, is that we have a lot of companies that are building these projects. They're not the utilities that are building them though, and then they're not going in front of the commission for approval. They're going in front of the board.
Are they supposed to?
No. The state statute says that we do not approve those projects. We're approving natural gas, a coal plant or nuclear.
Sure.
We're not approving the renewables. Those are going in front of the board of supervisors for the 15 different counties. So the board of supervisors, some of the counties, I think maybe it's 5 counties they've passed like a moratorium on renewables, or I
think it's for 3 years.
Yeah, or they've passed some ordinances about that. Pinal County Board of Supervisors just recently voted down a solar project in Florence Junction.
Interesting.
So a lot of people are going to the commission and they're saying they either want more renewables or they want less renewables, but we're not the ones that are voting on those projects. So that's important for people to know. We also are interconnected with all of the states. So it is common that we are passing energy back and forth. I don't know specifically about the New Mexico project or not.
It's brand new. And like I mentioned, I just heard it on the way, and I hear a lot more about us giving energy to California, but this is the first time I've heard that we're trying to partner with New Mexico.
Now for Arizona, we're in a position that when we are selling energy or buying energy, it is at the advantage of the ratepayer. So it's usually because it's going to be cheaper to generate in our own, or if there's excess energy, then they can sell that and make money on it. But those costs are directly passed down to ratepayers though. So like an APS can't, they're not going to sell power and then line their profit margins with that, right? Those costs and savings get passed down in real time to ratepayers.
Good.
'Cause energy's a daily market. It's like the stock market. So the prices fluctuate and they're trading every day. And so they're, we have an APS, they've got a trading floor just in downtown Phoenix where they're in there and they're deciding, if they're going to buy or sell that day or what. And that's, based on keeping costs down.
So you mentioned nuclear, which is one of our cleanest and most reliable sources to really help us with power. And it's my understanding that a lot of that in Palo Verde goes to California. And I thought that it was unfair, but if I understand it correctly, it's because it goes to the highest bidder. And so do we make a profit to sell that to California?
Yeah, Palo Verde. Palo Verde is really interesting because I thought it was solely owned by Arizona until I was campaigning with two of the commissioners, Nick Myers and Kevin Thompson.
It's the largest nuclear in the
It's the largest
country,
nuclear,
right?
yeah. There's 3 reactors. It's the biggest one. But so there's like 7 utilities that own Palo Verde.
I did not know
that.
that.
So back to the 1980s, Palo Verde was so expensive to build, it almost bankrupted APS.
Oh, wow.
And they had to kind of put a surcharge mechanism on the bills, I think way back then, 40 years ago or something, to start bringing in more capital to not be bankrupt and actually finish that project. But there's a couple California utilities, and then there's another state in Arizona. So we keep about like 20 or 30% between SRP and APS. A lot of people think that it's Arizona owned only because APS runs it, which is what I thought because I thought it was APS's plant.
Right.
They were chosen as the operations manager of the plant, so it is their employees, and they run it. But the other utilities have to pay them for those costs of running that plant. So so California does get Palo Verde, but it's only what they're entitled to get. So I don't think Palo Verde is really being sold off for like a profit, like that power, because they really need that, dispatchable, reliable base load.
Brownouts that they're
California's a mess.
It is a mess.
They get so much solar during the day, and they have millions and millions of solar panels, but peak demand is at night when solar's not producing. So then they get excess energy, and that's when they're paying Arizona to take it off their hands. I was at the office for Tucson Electric Power, and they were getting solar power from California that day at like negative 16 cents a kilowatt, meaning California was giving them 16 cents a kilowatt to take that power off their grid.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. So there has to be a limit like on renewables for that reason. Like, there's some renewables and they have a place, right? But they're not producing when we need them the most. So it's just a limited part they play. But it was the Inflation Reduction Act that helped create that. For Arizona, the tariff from the renewable tariff that we unwound, that started that big build out in Arizona. But it started it when renewables were expensive, and that's part of the reason it cost Arizona more money. It wasn't a free market decision. It was an ideological decision. And then you've got utilities being forced to spend money on a product that was more expensive. It's cheaper today, but they got so many subsidies from the federal government on these projects that a lot of independent companies, so non-utility companies, just independent power producer companies, started building solar and wind and battery storage because with the subsidies, they're turning a solid profit in a year or two, right? It's like they're getting a rate of return pretty quickly from those subsidies. Now that Congress and President Trump signed the bill to eliminate those subsidies, then they're going to have
because taxpayers pay for
those
subsidies.
We're all paying for it. These trillions have been spent trying to make renewables work, right? And it really should just be a free market. So they're cheaper now. We're maybe without like the subsidies, they can play more of a part in actually having, when we do an RFP, like a request for proposal, maybe they can come in and be a part when they answer the RFP, but it's always going to have to be limited because they can't solve for their timing issue.
Well, I'm going to pivot again. I'm really curious. But you've just had so much knowledge coming in. We ran for board 5-6 years ago, and you and I really dove in. I learned a lot working for the Arizona Department of Education, and that really helped.
Yeah, that was cool.
So it was very helpful.
You worked there.
Yes, it was very helpful. But with your new role on the Corporation Commission, you've learned a lot of new skills. So how do you balance being a mom, a wife, and being on two very important service roles in our state.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
talk about that.
That's a good question. So it helped that I had left my career to be a stay-at-home mom. So I'm probably one of the few elected officials that doesn't have a job, because a lot of elected officials still have jobs, especially in the legislature when it's supposed to be 100 days, but it's not. It's really a year-round job in the legislature. So that was helpful. And the board meetings are at night, and so the commission meetings are never at night. So, while my daughter's in school, that's a good time for me to, she's 10, that's a good time for me to, delve into things, during those school times. And the commission is definitely like, it's a lot of work, but it's definitely something that can be managed well, with the school board, because it's such different schedules and, different demands. Like school board, for example, you probably see a massive slowdown in the summer.
Yes.
Right. And we're only having 2 meetings this summer, and then everything's closed. Like, we're not hearing from parents. So it's like
the meetings are shorter.
They're shorter. They start earlier. So there's a cleanup time. And then the same thing happens like around, winter break, like around Christmas time. And so there's definitely some good lulls. And so the time requirement, both roles kind of vacillate, up and down. It's usually not where they line up together. That's happened a couple of times where I'm like, okay, that week was really hard, right? But it works pretty well that they're on such different sort of time cycle demands of what I'm expected to be doing and what meetings I need to be in.
Yeah, and then I know you and I have had conversations after midnight. I'm trying to think. So it helps to be a workhorse and to be able to work when you can, when it's quiet, because that's me. I mean, I'm an empty nester now, but my kid's here for the summer. But like I'm having a rude awakening right now because I have teenage boys coming in when I'm trying to like do things, and I. Like it's an adjustment to have him back from summer break. But.
Yeah, no, summer is a little challenging from like you want to spend time with your kids, but there's still work to do. So, we kind of balance that out. But I've got my daughter in swim lessons and tutoring. And so the people that do those things with her, I hope they don't think I'm like a checked out mom, because, she's in the pool and I'm like, all right, I got to text this and answer this email. And so there's definitely a lot of multitasking that happens in the summer.
We're all doing that, yeah.
Yeah, but she's been in swim lessons with the same teacher since she was 2. She loves it. So she doesn't expect me to just stare at her the whole time. Like, she loves her teacher, and they have like a great relationship. And so she's really actually interested in impressing her teacher and not me during that time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so there are some down times for me where I'm like, all right, I'm going to get this done. And but it's always a balance. I think whether, I was an elected official, for all of our moms out there, right?
Yes.
They're balancing so much too, and a lot
and
of
moms are great at it.
Yeah, and they're good at it. And the economy's been like so bad in a sense that prices have gone up so much and wages haven't gone up, that most moms are working now, even if they have a husband that's working. Everyone's trying to find ways to bring in more money and make ends meet. So, elected or not, like, Americans we're working hard and trying to balance that stuff out.
We are. And I think what's really important too is that we can all do something to affect change. Yeah. Right. And not everybody can run for office like you and I know. People, you have to have thick skin, right?
You do.
You have to have gumption. You have to have thick skin. People say things about me all the time. It doesn't affect me. Personally, it doesn't bother me, but I think that's one of the obstacles that a lot of people, they worry about what their friends will think if they vote a certain way, or if they do something, or if they're very outspoken. But
you have to not
you
care.
You and I don't really have that, do we?
I mean, and you can lose relationships, right? Like, and I know people who have, or they have parents that are a different political party, and it's hurt their relationships. But like, we're in a battle to try to preserve our rights and preserve the founding principles of our country, and there's going to be sacrifices that have to be made to do that.
And I used to think it was a battle between different parties. It is not. There's a spiritual battle happening, and there's also some things where you think, okay, this party thinks this way and this party thinks this way, but we're just in this weird kind of, I don't know if we hit a blip in the matrix or what happened, but there's kind of I will say the word evil. There's like a good and evil happening in some of this. And I'm going to swing back to the two main reasons why people send their kids to school, what their expectations are to learn, and then for safety. Yeah. And so I think that a lot of us that are on school boards right now that are conservative are seeing some things that are not safe at schools.
Yeah, well, and there is an evil going on because look at the sex scandals in the schools. It's disgusting.
That's where I was.
And it shouldn't happen. And I saw one today I shared on Instagram because this teacher was having her students go up to the front of the class and have same-sex kids kiss each other, which same-sex or opposite sex, completely wrong and inappropriate, right? Doesn't matter.
We should not be sexualizing our children in any manner.
Telling students they have to kiss each other, right? But had, two female students, tell them they have to kiss, and then they were going to grade them on it. And it seems inconceivable that this would happen in a classroom at all. So something's really gone wrong in this profession that we see these stories all the time. And then we have very local ones, Peoria.
It's happening in my own district.
My district, we have things, they haven't made the paper or anything. One of the things my superintendent is really good on is telling us everything. A lot of superintendents leave their board members in the dark, and they're not telling them details, what school, what students, what happened. So he's telling us everything, so we're informed, we know what's going on. They're not all doing that.
Well,
that's a problem.
We are mandatory reporters.
We
are. That was brought into law, 2 years ago?
Yeah, Senator Warren.
Yes.
Senator Warner.
Yeah. And so we are mandatory reporters, but some of the problems that the governing board members are facing, like in my own district, we don't always get the information. Yeah. And so while I am a mandatory reporter, I'll get information from parents, but if I get it from a district, we're not given an employee name under the guise of it's active investigation and then FERPA. But as I dive deep, and especially what happened in Peoria, FERPA doesn't apply if a child is getting harmed, allegedly.
Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I don't care how old the student is, because I'm frustrated at people that are like, well, this student in Peoria that was sleeping with 2 teachers was 18. I'm like, he's a student, though. Yeah. It's irrelevant. And maybe the abuse started when he wasn't, of legal age. But just even a student, that shouldn't be happening. Like, you don't send your kids off to school hoping they'll meet someone and have a relationship like that. That's talking about school staying in its lane. But teachers, you would think, would be there to protect students. I think most teachers are. Yeah. We definitely, though, have some sort of subgroup of people that are sick, and they're really hurting public education. And we have to be merciless in addressing this.
To root them out.
Yeah, I don't care if you lose your livelihood, if you're the kind of person
that's going to harm a child,
that's harming kids or sleeping with students. Like, if your livelihood's over, fine, or you go to jail, fine. These things are wrong, and if we can't say that this is wrong, we've got big problems.
And I will. And you said an important thing, though, because I think the majority of our teachers, they're good and they want to see students learning and thriving, but these bad apples are doubling down. And then the problem stems when districts try to hide and protect and aren't transparent about it. We've all worked for companies, and there's always employees that don't follow laws or that break the laws, but we don't protect individuals that are doing bad things. We protect students in our schools, and that to me is very frustrating. So there has to be some kind of link back to, I know we're required to report them to police and Arizona Department of Education, well, the department, the school safety, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank.
SROs.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to report them to the State Board of Education. There you go. Yeah. State Board of Education. However, one of the things that I'm seeing, there's a little bit of a disconnect because they can lose their license, but then they can go work because they still have a fingerprint clearance in some cases. So we have to really make sure that happens when they do get, and people are innocent until proven guilty, I will say that. But if it is determined that a child has been harmed by an individual that they were working with, when they lose their license, they also need to lose that fingerprint clearance.
Yeah, I agree. And the Department of Ed is slow. What is, really important for districts is that they are doing that reporting, but also when they're hiring people, that they check the Department of Ed to see if there's pending investigations.
Yes.
So our former HR director said a lot of schools are not doing that. It's the law. When they're going to bring anybody on, they're supposed to check for pending investigations. But if the districts don't report it, there's nothing to check. But they're also skipping that step. So I think something, you could do as a lawmaker is look into putting teeth into that law, right? So here's the penalties. Here's what happens if you don't check. Here's penalties or something that happens that makes them say we have to not skip this step of reporting. So my new superintendent's really good about it. I think what you said about protecting and covering up.
Yes.
That's where these bad apples have thrived.
Yes.
And we've really hurt public education by doing that. And in the efforts to try to protect one person or protect the school from scandal, you're hurting a lot of other people. Yes. So they've got to, in public school, get over that mentality that they're there to protect anyone's job.
Right.
And what you said, it's the students we're supposed to be protecting.
Right. We're the adults in the room.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. So I want to work on a policy where we actually list out, here's how the superintendent has to keep the board informed.
Yes.
So for some of these districts where I'm hearing, like you were one of the board members who have told me your superintendents are not telling you these things. I think
it's now that we have a new superintendent, it's improving.
It's better. Yeah.
It's better, but we have a long ways to go.
But policy, but then also even in legislation, I think that's something we could address, with, bring in the lawyers, bring in ledge counsel about what things have to be protected, but how are you as a board member not supposed to be informed about the employee or the school? And, let's say that employee ends up on a personnel report for dismissal. You're going to vote and not have any clue what happened with that employee.
Yeah.
So,
and I think for us, what we're seeing is that we get the information that the parents get with everything redacted, which is not appropriate for an elected official.
No, it's not. It's
right?
not for the
when
board.
You're a mandatory reporter.
Yeah.
The other thing too is if they come from out of state, we don't have that data on them because it's not shared across state lines. And then the H-1B visas too, if something happened in another country and they come in to work in our schools, we don't have that data either.
True.
So
that is a big gap.
There are some places that we can improve on student safety, definitely. And as a lawmaker, I would love to partner with anybody who wants to work on student safety. The Corporate Commission does work with the legislature. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Corporation Commission.
Yeah, we do because of the budget, and so that one of the state agencies that gets some funding. We are one of the only 2 offices in Arizona that turns a profit for the state. So the treasurer
and then Game of Fish. Also.
Yeah. Oh, the Game of Fish, and then the commission. Because the commission sends like $20 to $25 million a year back to the general fund from like the fines and stuff that we collect. So we actually don't even really take much to run. That office. Yeah. But the lawmakers like to write a lot of bills that do impact the commission. So from that aspect, we end up working with the legislature a lot. And I think there's definitely more room to improve there.
Yeah.
I've asked a lot of lawmakers that are running and stuff like, are you going to be willing to meet with me though when I tell you this bill impacts the commission? Because some they don't necessarily care about your opinion, or they think that, well, you've only been in there a year and a half. You probably don't know that much. And, and then they're like, some people I'm not going to name names or anything, but aren't really listening. And I think that's a problem. You should always listen to the person who's the boots on the ground.
Exactly. And that's been some of the problems with some of the laws that have come across for children in schools, because you and I are parents, so we've seen it from a governing board perspective and from a parent perspective, and not all the laws that have come through for education are good ones.
Yeah.
And people that don't have kids in our district are making laws for us. And so I think it's really important to have different perspectives and to have those lived experiences as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So,
well, tell us about your race before we wrap up, and tell me how it's going,
Yeah.
and then where people can go on your website to support you or to find out more about your race.
Yeah, thank you. So it's going well. It's the advantage of being an incumbent is that you can say, I've got a voting record now.
What you've accomplished.
Yeah, here's what I've accomplished, and here's what we are accomplishing, and where we're going. And it's a lot of people don't realize we don't have a primary for school board. It's nonpartisan, but no primary. So no school board members will be on the ballot in July. but we're on the ballot in November, and there's no D or R next to anybody's name.
Explain that. I mean,
yeah, so
it's nonpartisan.
It's nonpartisan, and it's also not printed on the ballot either.
So you have to vet your candidates.
Vet them, ask them really good questions, and some people make it too easy to lie to them. And I always tell people, like, when you're talking to candidates, you need to have a poker face and don't ask leading questions. Like, try to get them in a position where they have no idea what your opinion is, and find out what
your political background is, so that they can be truthful to you.
Because I think I've seen too many instances where people, I don't support, are winning people over, and I'm like, I know you don't think that. I've seen you at other events. I know you don't believe that, but here you are saying it. But then you can't be the one that slings mud. So you just...
Well, it goes back to, we just have to elect better people.
Yeah.
People with integrity that really care and that don't want to be career politicians, but want transparency, want what's best for all Arizonans, regardless. And sometimes you have to cross over. You can't just be, these are my party talking points. You have to do what's best.
It's do what's best, everyone. Yeah. And I don't think that your political party necessarily means that you're going to do a good job on the board or not, because a lot of doing the best job on the board takes guts.
Yes, it does.
And you have to be willing to sometimes be a lone voice or deal with that. No matter how you vote, someone's going to be upset.
Yes.
So you can't.
I get that a lot.
Flip flop and just try to win people over. You have to vote based on what's our goal here, what's at stake, where are we trying to go, with these decisions, and then let the chips fall where they may. So I feel like I've been able to show all of that in my last 4 years.
Yes, you have.
So I've got and I've got my website up. It actually has both my commission issues and election.
Wonderful.
Not election, school board election issues on there, but it's electrachelwalden.com. And then I'm very active on social media.
Spell that, because there's different ways to spell Walden, so spell it.
Well, and Rachel. So Rachel, it's the biblical spelling, and Walden, like the pond in Massachusetts.
I love it.
Yeah, elect Rachel Walden. And there's a contact form for people that want to get a hold of me or ask more questions. I've got a lot of people ask me for yard signs. So that makes me really helpful. For people that don't know, yard signs are huge. If you really want to see someone to get elected, they say putting a yard sign in your yard is as much advertising as if you donated $500 to the campaign.
Yes.
So that one's huge, but I'm happy with the number of people that are asking me for those signs.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And as you know, I'm running for District 4 State House of Representatives.
Yeah, you have a primary.
I have a primary. There's 3 individuals running for 2 spots there, and I am equipped and I'm ready, and my campaign is going very well. As you and I talked about, when you run for office, it's different when you're on a school board because kind of everybody likes you and it's safe. But when you run for different offices, the naysayers come out, especially if you're not their favorite candidate. But what I've done really effectively this election cycle is just go in this direction. I have my talking points. I know where I'm strong and I know what I need to learn. That's why I'm having these live streams, having these conversations, because I learned a lot today.
Yeah.
And we have to have conversations with people that, number one, don't necessarily align with us, but also people that have different knowledge than we do, because you have to grow when you're ready to step up. I'm ready for promotion. I'm ready to be promoted from school board to the ledge. And I'm equipped and I'm ready, but we have to elect better people.
We do. And that takes effort, right? That means maybe going to a political event, and people feel worried about going. No, that's where you can go and have a good one-on-one conversation with somebody, or email your questions to the campaign.
Yes.
And you're out working hard, and it's so impressive. And I think the people that are, working hard like that shows that that's not going to change when they get elected. They're going to be the hard workers. Because what I find really frustrating with people, but what they're telling me, like what they don't like is when they see elected officials not getting the job done, or they're just too busy fighting. They're too busy promoting an ideology, but not actually getting
a certain agenda.
Yeah, getting into the work and getting it done. So I think too, like looking at candidates that are out there and meeting with the people, like shows a work ethic that transfers 100%. Into the office. And that's important too. And you're MIA people and they just want to sit back and coast, like that kind of tells you probably what they're like in office too. And there is a rate of absenteeism that happens in the legislature. that gets reported on every year. And you have some lawmakers that are there all the time and some that, can miss quite a lot. And that's important when you're talking about actually getting the job done, and the commitment to the work is that you will show up, and nobody knows. You said you learned something, but nobody knows everything about everything.
No.
And what's crazy about the legislature is that you're going to be asked about federal issues
Yes.
and state issues and school board issues, like everything under the sun for legislature.
Yes.
So,
and that's why I'm having these conversations.
yeah, and no one's going to know everything, right?
But one of my superpowers, though, is I did work for Fortune 100 companies and some startups, and
That's
so
huge, yeah.
networking is my
Yeah.
superpower. So no, I don't know everything, but I know a lot of people that know a lot,
And then
and that's helpful.
and then you're willing to learn.
Yes.
And that's
And listen.
every elected office.
Yes.
Right? Like nobody knows everything. So it's like, who's going to be willing to have partnerships and have relationships with the right people, that like you're getting the factual information about the issue.
Yes.
So you know how to handle it. And there is that time commitment that doesn't get spoken about, right? But I think the good elected officials are the ones that are doing that research themselves and trying to find out, what can I learn about this? And you've texted me and called me about energy.
Yeah.
And from your conversations with people, from rooftop solar to data centers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's important to have an open mind, because I think we all have our different opinions.
Yeah.
But to actually listen to the experts and people that are knowledgeable, and listening to differing views, because I've had a couple people, I had Amanda Moniz on and I had Mark Burr. They had very different information about our water situation here in Arizona, and kind of listening and taking that data in, doing your own research, but coming up with your own mind and your own opinions on things is very important. But also being able to listen to people that don't necessarily align with you is important.
Oh yeah, I think I do. I love how Rush Limbaugh used to talk about listening to both sides. He would read the Democrat media, the left-wing media, and he's like, look, you guys get mad at what they report, but you need to know how other people are thinking.
Yes.
Right? And how are you going to solve anything if you can't listen and hear different perspectives on an issue? Or even in the legislature, you've got to get all these other people to vote with you.
Yes. 100%.
So, and a lot of it is like, you're not going to get everything you want in one bill. But I don't think we're going to fix everything in 1 year either. It's going to be a series of steps. Like we got here to where we are by a series of steps. So it's going to be the same thing to fix things. It's going to be a series of steps to get there. So,
but again, going back to electing better people.
Yeah, electing good people and paying attention.
Yes.
Like I am frustrated when people seem indifferent to who's going to be in office. I don't want to get involved in that stuff. I hate politics.
I don't like politics,
But they're going to make decisions that impact your life.
And spend your money.
And spend your money and spend your taxpayer money. And it's like, you really need to get
attention.
involved even if you don't like it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for coming on today.
Oh,
it was
thanks
a
for
lot
having
of
me.
A lot of fun.
Yes.
And I always learn things whenever I have conversations with you. I love even the late night texts and the phone calls, things like that. But I'll give you the last word. Do you have anything? We said a lot.
We said a lot, and this is my first podcast with a friend and not someone I haven't met before. So this was really fun. And thanks for having me on. And I feel like in 2022 we had a really good crop of people get elected to school board.
We did, and we're all running for higher offices.
And that makes sense to me. Why though, right? I feel like we had a crop of candidates. It was almost an anomaly.
It was,
and it makes sense that those are the individuals that you would pull for higher office, because we did some really special things.
We did
during that election year and on our boards and meeting the demands of the changes that need to be made in education. That was big.
Yes, because more than half our state budget goes to education.
And it takes less money to run the state of Arizona than to run education.
Yes.
It's definitely something wrong there.
Yes.
And not everybody elected in 2022 is doing as good of a job, but there was a good core group of us that are still friends, and I think have shown that, we can be leaders.
It goes back to that networking too, because we've learned off of each other.
And we still do. So it's really helpful. But thanks for having me on. My website's electrachelwalden.com, and you don't have to live in Mesa to donate to my campaign. You can go on and kick me $10 even, right? It adds up. Those things help me buy those yard signs and buy the advertising.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to thank my very special guest, Rachel Walden. Today it was a great conversation, and as you can see, we love to chat, and she just is a wealth of information. So please support Rachel in her reelection campaign for Mesa Public Schools, and it gets, again, that website again. Tell me one more time.
RachelWalden.com.
Yes, with ease there, both Rachel and Walden. And it is very important to elect good representatives from school board on up to governor. There's a lot of new people on tickets, and I will just urge you all to vet your candidates, because there's a lot of us that are moving up maybe from school board to the legislature, or there's a lot of shuffling. I know here in CD1, for instance, Schweikert is moving to governor, and then there's all these holes being filled. So vet your candidates, especially if they've been elected before you can see their voting records. So this is Sandra Christensen, and I am the voice of the people. I'm signing off for today. Thank you, my guest, Rachel Walden.